have to say, another thing that I was looking at this week was, and I was actually going to bring it up, and it started because I had seen a video on our prison systems and what a mess they really are and what they're really there for, for money, and how, prisoners go in, and then what it really creates is someone that can never actually, become a part of society again. They become kind of ostracized, and it just recreates the same thing over and over again. And one of the things that they said was in there was that for criminals, that what they find is that many of them have a personal or physical issue, like that they're suffering, and then they act out. So it's interesting that you brought this in there about what you were saying about basically just getting, beaten down and beaten down and beaten down, and then you get to a point where you fight back,
right?
And you're basically kind of act out. And I think that's so in line with like basically what they were saying and what creates a criminal. And
right. And certainly there's a massive lack of compassion running in our collective. And that's, by and large, why these people feel like they're not heard. And if you look at the teachings that I work to spread, that's one of the things that I always tell my students is that if there's one thing the mind can't stand, it's feeling like it's not being heard. It can't stand it. Like, so for anyone listening who doesn't understand what I'm saying there, just look at any moment you've ever had where you've said something that somebody perceived incorrectly, and look at the automatic kind of reflexive action you take that has to kind of fix their misperception. No, I didn't mean that. I meant this, right? And I don't mean like, no, I didn't mean a cheeseburger. I meant a hamburger. I mean like something else where you feel compelled to correct them because they're not seeing you clearly, or they're not seeing your intent clearly. And that's the thing, like the mind can't stand it. Remember, for the lower mind, the personal sense of self, everything that constructs us, right, has to be held in place. Because as soon as I start to challenge what comprises my sense of me, it starts getting a little wavy there, and that's not comfortable for the ego. The ego wants it to be really solid. So anytime someone misperceives me, I have to stand up for myself and be heard. So that's what you're seeing as well in these people who end up taking action, that's outside of our social norms as far as what we're considering acceptable. And they do it because they don't feel heard. They don't feel seen, and at a certain point, a child will deal with that and shrink in. But at some point, especially as a child ages, they're going to stand up and fight back. And that's what we see over and over again. So when we live in a society where there's no compassion for people, just in general terms, not to mention someone has, physical inabilities or mental inabilities, but just people based on what part of the world or the country they live in, or what part of town they live in, or their socioeconomic standing, and not having compassion for them from the space that, we can say everyone chooses what they walk into, but from a certain level, we can look and say, well, you're where you're at because you were kind of lucky enough to be born into that space. And then this guy over here is where he's at because he was unlucky enough to be born into that space. Now, from a higher understanding, we understand that everyone's perfectly placed because it's what's needed for the next part of our own journey. However, that can be utilized as a way of not showing compassion, right? Which is certainly not what I would teach at all. We're here to be compassionate in the world, of course. And if someone has the, the karmic repercussions so that they have to be born in a really challenging situation, of course, we would lend compassion to that person or to that group of people because it's the right thing to do, right?
Yeah.
The right thing to do. And as a society, we are seriously hurting as far as our concept of what right action is. There doesn't seem to be any question about that. We're just a mess concerning what we think right action is, because it's seriously lacking in compassion by and large.